Welcome to the Men for Life podcast. Our guest today is Dr. George Delgado. Dr. Delgado, how are you doing today?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for joining us. Dr. Delgado is the president and founder of the Steno Institute. Since 2005, he has been the medical director of Culture of Life Family Services in San Diego, California. And he was also the founder of the Abortion Pill Reversal Program, now called Abortion Pill Rescue. Dr. Delgado, it's really exciting to have you on today. I think that your voice as a man in the pro-life movement, and especially the length of time that you have been doing this, is a profound voice that can really help not only the pro-life movement, but also help in our mission with Men for Life, which is to empower other men to speak, in great part by connecting with men who are already in the movement. So I really do appreciate you being here today. I would like to start, if we may, with how you got involved in the pro-life movement. Can you tell us about that?
I was born and raised in a very faithful Catholic pro-life family. So really from the time I was a child, I had a deep respect for life. I was very, very fortunate that my parents inculcated us in the faith. And there was never any doubt that life was very sacred, a very important gift from God. And so as I grew and started to mature as a young man, then I realized that abortion was pure evil, and that it was something that I needed to oppose. And of course, on the other end of life, euthanasia and all that, as that came along later, as I was a medical professional, I found that equally disturbing. So it was really just a gradual development of me and my beliefs that started with what my parents gave me, and a very rich background of faith in Jesus Christ.
How did that carry on into your medical practice? I think, there's a lot of, my understanding without a medical background is that once people are immersed in the science, and I've heard you speak on other platforms about actual policies of different medical boards which lean pro-choice. So how are you able to continue that pro-life belief through being indoctrinated, or were you at that time even indoctrinated into any beliefs that science over life, which at the time I believe it was more of a question of whether or not life begins at conception than it is today, where science supports that life begins at conception?
Well, yeah, but the whole question of when life begins, that's been answered for more than 50 years, probably 100 years, with the basic studies of embryology. So that's really never a question that can be challenged, but rather it's the whole idea of, quote, a woman's right to choose. And if a woman has final and utmost control over that new human being that's growing within her. And unfortunately, the medical profession, my conclusion at this point is that there is a systemic corruption in the medical profession from an ethical standpoint, and it's very, very pervasive. And I think in many ways it started with the whole abortion question. And you see that many of these medical societies, from American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, American Association of Family Physicians, American Academy of Pediatrics, that all or most of them, and the American Medical Association too, I'll throw them in, were really taken over ideologically by a group of very progressive liberal pro-abortion forces. For example, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecology has now declared itself, it's a professional society, but it's declared itself a abortion advocacy group. They say that really unabashedly on their website. And when you look at it, however, not once have they polled their membership, all of the obstetrician gynecologists who belong to ACOG, about the abortion question. It's always been a top-down thing by these ideologues who have taken over these organizations. So it's very, very difficult in the medical profession. You have to have a good moral compass. You have to be firmly rooted in good ethics. And you have to have a thick skin in order to withstand the pressures and ultimately what I've seen is persecution by these pro-abortion forces.
And just to be clear, when you say persecution, are you referring to persecution just from the outside, from the pro-abortion forces, or is there also persecution in any sense from these medical licensing boards?
Well, thus far, there have not been widespread persecution by medical licensing boards, although in Colorado, a law was passed that abortion pill reversal could only be performed if it were approved by 3 licensing boards: the medical board, the pharmacy board, and the nursing board. And of course, these boards are stacked with pro-abortion, anti-APR forces, and so they have refused to approve abortion pill reversal. So there you have actual persecution by the licensing boards. In other states, it has not yet come to that, although in California, I think we are on the slippery slope because during the COVID pandemic, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but I think it's still germane, the medical board declared that anybody who was giving, quote, misinformation or false information regarding COVID-19 was liable to lose the medical license. And of course, there you get to a situation where it's the medical board that declares what is medical orthodoxy, what is true information, what is misinformation, and then can judge if you're outside of the bounds of that, quote, medical orthodoxy. Well, the same thing could happen, as you can see, with abortion pill reversal. And the state of California has actually sued Real Options Obria and Heartbeat International over abortion pill reversal. So although it's not the actual medical board that's suing, but it's really the same organization, if you will, the state of California, of which the medical board is part of. So we're seeing it already creeping up, and I anticipate we may see more of it unless we stand up and fight back.
That kind of goes along with another question that I had for you. When you bring up Colorado, I know that you had provided written testimony for a bill that was introduced in Colorado. And my simple understanding of the bill was that it would require abortion providers to provide information, just letting the patient know about the abortion pill reversal procedure. Is that
so? Yes, as a point of clarification, that was a previous bill that was several years ago, and that bill failed. It did fail to pass out of the committee where it was being presented. This other law that has been passed is an actual persecution of abortion pill reversal.
So I guess to the 2017 bill, my question was going to be, before I knew about the newer law, my question was going to be, what basis do they provide for why we just refuse to let people know that there is an option should they change their mind?
Well, the lies they use are that they say there is no medical evidence that abortion pill reversal is safe and effective, even though we have now a handful of published studies which show that abortion pill reversal is both safe and effective. And our experience has shown us that women who are given the opportunity of a second chance at choice are extremely grateful. The analogy I always bring up is CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. When CPR first became available, they did not wait to have randomized placebo-controlled trials where you would have somebody go down with a heart attack and you'd look on the list and say, although this patient's been randomized to not get CPR, let's just see what happens if the patient's down and we don't do anything. No, we would do CPR on everyone because it was the only thing we knew that was effective. And it's the same thing with APR. There's no other treatment that has been tested at all or studied to reverse the effects of chemical abortion. Women are asking to reverse their chemical abortions, and therefore we're offering it with the evidence that we have now, which is good evidence. It's not the highest form of scientific evidence because, like any relatively new breakthrough in medicine, you start off with simpler studies and then you work your way up to more complex studies. But there's no reason we should deprive women who want that second chance of choice of that just because the medical leaders who are highly biased are lying and are saying that there's no proof that it works.
Can you tell me, do you know what the current numbers are for patients who have successfully delivered a baby after abortion pill reversal?
Sure. Heartbeat International, which now runs the Abortion Pill Rescue Network, reports that over 5,000 babies have been born after successful abortion pill reversal. So we're very, very excited about that. These are 5,000 human beings whose voices are undeniable in stating that abortion pill reversal works and that it's safe, and that there are women who change their minds after starting their chemical abortions.
And when we talk about the abortion pill reversal, and I am going to ask you to go into a little bit of detail about that in a moment, but we're referring to the abortion pill mifepristone, correct?
That's right.
Did I pronounce that correct in my
non-medical? Very well.
Okay. So mifepristone, which is the first pill given in the abortion pill, in chemical abortion, can be reversed through the procedure that you have created, the abortion pill reversal procedure. Now, my understanding is that with mifepristone alone, there is about a 15% delivery rate. So it is unsuccessful 15% of the time. Mifepristone is unsuccessful in aborting the baby 15% of the time.
Well, that's about right. But just for clarification, the figures we use from Dr. Mary Davenport's 2017 article, where she looked at all the original mifepristone-only studies before misoprostol was added to the cocktail, that we found that up to 25% would survive. And these these were preborn babies that were not followed to delivery because these were abortion studies. So they let them survive for a couple of days or maybe even up to a week before they did the surgical abortions. So we use a conservative number that is 25% survival if nothing else is done after the woman takes mifepristone.
Okay. Then what is the number if the abortion pill reversal procedure is undertaken?
So with our best protocols in our 2018 study, we found 68% success with the giving progesterone to reverse the effects of mifepristone.
I guess now is probably a good time in understanding for our audience that I did this backwards by not asking you to explain the abortion pill procedure prior to getting into statistics about it. Can you please explain what the procedure is?
Sure. So the abortion pill, mifepristone and misoprostol, is approved up to 10 weeks of pregnancy in the U.S. by the FDA. We're seeing that it's being used up to 12 weeks and even beyond now. They're really pushing the envelope. Woman takes the mifepristone first, 200 milligrams. The mifepristone is a progesterone receptor blocker. So what it does is it blocks the effects of progesterone, and by doing that, several things happen. One of the most important thing that happens is that because progesterone is like a biologic superglue that holds the placenta firmly attached to the wall of the uterus, that mifepristone, by blocking its effects, causes separation of that placenta from the wall of the uterus. What does that do? It cuts off the lifeline to the preborn baby. The preborn baby no longer is receiving hydration, nutrition, and is no longer able to discharge its waste into the mother's system. And that's what leads to the preborn baby to die. The blocking of the progesterone also leads to other effects, including the cervix starts to open. Cervix is a biologic valve keeping the outside world from the inside world, and the uterus starts to get twitchy and starts to contract some. About 24 to 48 hours later, she's instructed to take misoprostol, the second drug. Misoprostol is a very potent drug that causes strong uterine contractions that expels the remains of the preborn baby to complete the abortion.
How did you come about creating this procedure?
Well, it came about because a woman asked me for help. I was in my office in San Diego seeing patients. I got a phone call from a sidewalk counselor by the name of Terry Palmquist in Bakersfield, California, who carried a cell phone and had a website. And she had received a phone call from a woman in El Paso, Texas, who had started the abortion pill process, had started her chemical abortion by taking mifepristone and regretted it and asked Terry if she knew how she could stop her chemical abortion. Terry, of course, had never heard of that before. She called me. I had never heard of that before either. However, I started to think about how the mifepristone works. And I had studied mifepristone since even before it was approved in 2000. I knew it worked by blocking progesterone receptors. I also had a lot of experience using progesterone in early pregnancy, women who had low progesterone levels and who are having cramping and spotting, a situation we call threatened miscarriage. And in those situations, I knew that if I gave progesterone, that I could save the pregnancy because the cramping and spotting was from low progesterone levels. Now, with these patients, however, they may or may not have low progesterone levels, but functionally, their progesterone effect is low because the progesterone is being blocked. So I had these two sort of data banks in my brain. The Holy Spirit put the two of them together. And I thought, okay, well, maybe if we give extra progesterone, we can outcompete the mifepristone at the receptor site until the mifepristone washes out of the system and we can stop the effects of the mifepristone and save the baby. So I came up with a protocol right then, and I called a doctor I found in El Paso, Texas, Dr. Jonalyn Bellacura, asked her if she'd be willing to treat this patient with progesterone. She said yes, and she had the progesterone in the office. She started the treatment, and about 2 weeks later, she gave me a call and said, "Hey, Dr. Delgado, the baby is still alive." So I thought, "Oh, that's wonderful." And then I got weekly or monthly reports, and sure enough, the baby did very well, was born, and was perfectly normal. It was a little later then that I heard of actually the first reversal, which was by Dr. Matthew Harrison, who, unbeknownst to me, had a very similar situation where he gave the woman progesterone and was able to save the baby.
Are you aware of whether that baby was also born healthy? And
Yes, that baby was born and is now a little girl doing very well.
how do you think that sidewalk counselor, as you called her, came to call you?
How do I think she came to call me?
Yes. Did you
Well,
have any previous relationship with?
Yeah, we had a previous relationship where she would periodically call me when she had medical questions, when she was trying to help the people she was counseling. So she had, called me previously, and I think she trusted my opinion.
Okay. And you said she was out of San Diego?
No, she was actually in Bakersfield, California, which is in the
But the
central.
patient was in El Paso, Paso,
El Paso,
Texas.
Texas. Yeah, so we had a triangulation there of God's work going on.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Like God put the right people in the right place at the right time. Because I can tell you, as an attorney, I've never received a call from someone in El Paso, Texas, or Bakersfield, California. Typically as an attorney, when I get phone calls, it's from people right here in Lake Charles, Louisiana, who Google and find someone local. So the fact that someone from El Paso, Texas somehow called an attorney in Bakersfield, California, who had a relationship with you is just amazing. And it really is, a testament to God's work. It's a very cool story to hear that.
Yeah. I would tell you, she's a sidewalk counselor, not an attorney.
What's a sidewalk counselor?
Sidewalk counselor is someone
Let me just let you know, I assumed that when you said sidewalk counselor, that was just you referring to an attorney who didn't have an office. I've heard enough bad attorney jokes that that's just where my mind goes now. So please correct me and let's lift Terry up to her actual position.
Sidewalk counselors are usually specially trained volunteers who stand on the sidewalk literally in front of abortion centers and are there offering themselves to be of support to women who are thinking about aborting their babies. So they talk to them, they give them support, they ask them if they want to reconsider, they pray with them, and then if the woman decides to change her mind, then they make a referral to some pro-life clinic or pro-life doctor who can help.
Thank you for that clarification. And if Terry hears this, I would like her to know that I apologize for inferring that she was an attorney.
Apologize for the accusation.
That's right, for accusing her of being a lawyer. Dr. Delgado, in your time in the pro-life movement, have you seen an increase in the number of men stepping forward into the arena to fight for life?
I have, and I think we're seeing that trend, and I think that's part of the trend that you're leading with Men for Life. And I really think it's critically important because one of the big reasons we got to where we are is that men have been cut out down at the knees. We've been emasculated, we've been feminized, we've been pushed to the side. Men are designed and ordained by God, as according to Ephesians chapter 5, to imitate Christ. And what did Christ do? He gave himself as a sacrifice. So men are called to be servant leaders of their families, of the women they're with, of society, really. And we've forgotten those two words because men are no longer servants and they're no longer leaders. They've become spineless predators, essentially. They've gone from being protectors to predators. And so now men are waking up and seeing the great harm that they've caused by really abdicating their roles. And of course, we're not advocating men be tyrants. That's not what a servant leader is. We're advocating that men lead by example and lead by sacrifice. And that being with the women who are the mothers of their preborn children. And that means being there for them, giving them support and urging them to choose life to save the preborn babies that they have conceived with those women, not to give the cop-out phrase we hear so often, I'll support you in whatever you do. No, it doesn't make sense to support someone in a decision that is a very poor decision. You support that person, but you encourage that person to make a very good, a life-affirming decision. And so both on the micro level in these relationships, it's important for men to step up and be servant leaders, but also in the movement, people like you who are trying to be role models to men and are trying to teach men to be servant leaders. It's important for the leaders of the pro-life movement who are men to be strong servant leaders, to sacrifice, to be compassionate, but at the same time to give that strong direction, that direction towards what is the good, the beautiful, and the pure.
Yes. And I love that you said the word compassion, because that's something that I try to relay, in our message for Men for Life and in my own personal message. When my son was killed in an abortion 27 years ago, there were no resources. There was no, that I was aware of. There was no internet, at least in the substance that it is now. The internet, I was in a college dorm and the internet was something we used to download games, things that, it was just entertainment. And so there wasn't the ability to type in, my girlfriend's going to have an abortion. What do I do? And so without that resource, and without, the option would have been a phone book, right? So, in my recollection, there wasn't a phone book listing in the yellow pages for if your girlfriend's considering abortion. So without those resources, it really just devastated me and led to a very long path of self-destruction before I finally came to terms with what it was that I was doing this behavior to cover up. That's really why we're out here. But all that said, I've never, and I don't think it would be appropriate to come out, with hate or vitriol towards the mother of my child. I have no idea what she was faced with at that moment. I have no idea what was in her head. I have no idea the external pressures that she was feeling or receiving, from family, from wherever. I don't know her upbringing. And so, for me to attack her or to attack someone who's currently faced with a decision and is considering abortion, I think is the wrong way to approach it. I've heard and seen a lot of, not just men, but women also, but just hate. And I think it comes from what they believe is a good place. I think that the people who are using this anger and vitriol towards people who are considering abortion, I believe that they believe they're coming from a good place, but I don't think it's helpful. I think that, if someone's considering an abortion and I start screaming at them and cursing and telling them why they can't do that and they just can't do it, they're not going to be receptive to what I'm saying. They're going to walk away and most likely into the hands of someone who's going to be comforting. And no one is more comforting to someone who is considering an abortion than the abortion industry, who wants them to go through with the abortion. So I think compassion, strength as a man, balanced with compassion, is really the only way that we as men can proactively and effectively enter into and march alongside the women who are already in this fight. So I really like that you used the word compassion there.
Yeah, I think that's very important. We always have to separate our disdain for the crime of abortion and not let that disdain spread to the person who actually is a victim. Because when it all comes down to it, the medical abortion complex and each abortion has two victims, the preborn baby who dies and the woman who's victimized by them. And that they need to know that we love them. We don't love what they do. We hate what they do, but we love them. We need to mirror our Heavenly Father, who is full of compassion, mercy, and forgiveness, but at the same time holds us accountable and leads us to where we ought to be going.
Yes, sir. Just kind of shifting gears a little, I was speaking to someone with Texas Right to Life the other day, and they noted some of their statistics showed that a lot of their donor base, and I'm sure that this is representative of the nation as a whole, believes that the abortion fight is over, that with the Dobbs decision, it's no longer a fight. There's no longer a need to continue to press forward. What would you say to someone who has that belief?
Well, first of all, on the macro level, the fight for evil is never done in our lifetimes on this earth. But secondly, what the Dobbs decision did was a very great thing. That very poorly adjudicated decision of Roe v. Wade was finally repudiated. However, what it did was it just morphed the situation. And so whenever often happens in life when there are unintended consequences. And so by everything going back to the states, well, that just created new local battlegrounds. And now we see that the pro-abortion movement has been very successful in passing referenda in states where we never thought they would be able to pass referenda supporting and protecting abortion, such as in Ohio. They were really blindsided, this relatively pro-life state, because they came in and they campaigned with lies. So actually now the pro-abortion movement, I think with the Dobbs decision, felt like perhaps their backs were a bit against the wall. They've come out with more force, more vigor, more vengeance. So now more than ever, we need the pro-life forces to marshal and to be very active at the local levels in every single state, because otherwise each state is going to be picked off one after another. And Florida's on the ballot coming up here in November. And that would be a great tragedy if this pro-life state was flipped to become a state where the laws are enshrined to protect abortion extensively. So really, it's not going away. And I would say to the people in the great state of Texas, although you can't legally have an abortion in Texas, through the mail order and telemedicine abortions, mifepristone is getting into Texas. And now I would say that probably the percentage of abortions in Texas that are chemical abortions is probably 90-95%. But it's happening through the mail. Don't be foolish. Don't be naive. This is still happening in Texas. These are undocumented abortions. They're still happening. Your citizens are still being victimized by big abortion, and you need to stand up and fight it, not just in Texas, but in other states that are less fortunate than Texas that are not passing these great pro-life laws.
Well, we're about out of time, Dr. Delgado. I would ask, though, two more questions. One is, what would you say to a man or a young man who is faced currently with a spouse or a girlfriend or a significant other who is suggesting that she is considering abortion?
The first thing is to pray with all your might and ask of God to convert those hearts. That would be the first thing. The second thing is to offer yourself as a sacrifice to that woman and say, I'll do whatever it takes to support you so that we can bring our child to birth and to sustain and protect the life of our child. And I would also focus, what we've learned very much so in the pro-life movement, is that the women are kind of in situations very analogous to suicide, where they feel like they have no options. And even though they know a woman who's going to commit suicide knows it's wrong, she still does it because she feels there's no other way out. It's very much the same way with abortion. So focus on what her concerns are about her, and more focus on her actually than focusing on the baby is probably a safer approach for the baby. And look at what her concerns are. Why is she considering this? Let's see if we can fix the situation in your life, in our lives, that'll make it so that you're not going to want to commit this abortion. And let her know that you will be with her at her side, because the main thing they want is a man by the side of her, because they know that together they can do this. But that's going to be the most important thing. Offer yourself to be there, and that you're not going to run away. You're not going to abandon her. You'll be with her for the long term.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's incredibly helpful. So the idea that a woman who's faced with the consideration of abortion is analogous to suicide, that's not something that I'd ever considered. So I really appreciate that you said that. Last thing I have, Dr. Delgado, is how can the people who are listening to this and are watching us support you? How can we find you, and how can we support what it is that you do?
You can go to stenoinstitute.org, STENO institute.org, and find out about Steno Institute. You can donate there. It's a nonprofit with 401c3 status. So donations are tax deductible. And our purpose is to increase awareness, education, and research around abortion pill reversal, so we can perfect our protocols so that all women who might be in this situation already know about abortion pill reversal, and they know that if they regret their decision, that there is a very safe and effective second chance at choice through abortion pill reversal.
All right, Dr. Delgado, that is all the time we have. I really appreciate you coming on today, and I really appreciate so many of the things you said. And I look forward to talking with you again many times over the course of forever. As we continue to move forward, as you said, the fight against evil is never done. So I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.